Talking baseball, baseball and the O's.
Oh, welcome back, Birdland, to another episode of the Talkin Orioles Baseball Podcast. I am, of course, your host, Benny Becker. Thrilled to be with you, gang, back here today. We got a fantastic episode on our hands, breaking down the most recent series against the Diamondbacks. All three games we got to go over a little bit. We want to talk about Adley Rutschman and kind of some of the differences we're seeing in him this year. Obviously, such a team leader and such a fantastic catcher for us so far in his early career. But we're seeing a little bit of difference, and we want to kind of touch on those in the episode. We have some players getting called up or recalled off of IL. We also have a couple players going down, of course. Got to make room for the new guys. So we're going to touch on that, keep you up to date. We have some intriguing numbers just from the Orioles, kind of showing not only how successful they've been so far, but also possibly projecting onto how great they're going to be when it's all said and done this season. And that's something we've been talking about a lot. Even back in spring training, we had very, very high hopes, and we're talking some of these projected win numbers, but we're going to touch on that later. We want to keep you up to date on Grayson Rodriguez's rehab, and it's a very, very important thing for these Orioles moving forward, getting that man back ready and healthy. We also want to touch on kind of what is the plan for Craig Kimbrel moving forward. We've seen a little bit of different usage from him in that Diamondback series, but still what we're being told kind of is reverting back to what we expected coming into the year. So we're going to touch on all of that and kind of gauge out that situation a little. We want to talk about Rubensplash. I love it. Rubensplash. The episode's name, by the way, is Mr. Rubensplash's Neighborhood. And I think it's appropriate. We had David Rubenstein, new owner, out in the splash zone with Mr. Splash, playing Mr. Splash for an inning or two on Friday. And maybe it was the difference. We'll touch on all of that, but just want to kind of talk a little more in depth about how great and refreshing and amazing it is to have this kind of owner now moving forward for the Baltimore Orioles and the franchise. And also, I want to touch a little more into and dig deeper into the idea of these Orioles trading for a reliever, and specifically one reliever that I have as my wish list. You know, there's a few names that I'd be happy with. There's plenty of names that I think would improve the team at some point, but there is a single name that now I am campaigning for to get that player in Baltimore and in this franchise for this, hopefully, World Series run. So, we want to talk about the Orioles. I'm just going to kind of fill you in, and before we dig in, if you will, you know I like doing that. And we end up coming away with the series win against the Diamondbacks. Win 2 out of the 3 games. It was a home stint, and the Orioles mostly played very, very good baseball in that home stint. Our record's up to 26-13, continuing winning 2 out of every 3 games, which is absolutely elite when it comes to Major League Baseball team win percentages. You have to love it, and we're going to start digging in on Friday's game. It was a 4-2 win, and we saw a lot of good stuff. Cole Irvin continued his dominance. Really has been fantastic the past, 4, 5 starts maybe at this point. His scoreless streak did come to an end at 22 2/3 innings, but he continued having a fantastic day. Only let up 2 runs. They were the only 2 runs the Diamondbacks got on the day. And you have to love what we've seen from Cole Irvin. Remember back in spring training when I was telling you he came in the best shape of his life. He's kind of had this new focus, this refocus, if you will, for diet and exercise and work ethic to being the best pitcher he could be. Hell, he was a guy that I was saying had an outside chance at getting kind of some Cy Young votes. Maybe not being at the top 2 or 3, but when it's all said and done, being top 8 to 10 in AL Cy Young. It's certainly something that was possible, that I saw was possible coming into the season. And we continue to see it from Cole Irvin. We see the increased velocity. We see the increased movement. And as of recently, we've seen the increased control, which is really the last step in Cole Irvin taking that next step to getting himself some Cy Young votes throughout the whole season. And frankly, just staying in the Orioles rotation as we kind of figure out how to manage all this talent. It's good problems to have, guys. I'm not sitting here saying it's a negative, but it's certainly something that's intriguing moving forward. In fact, if we got time, I might continue talking about that six-man rotation that I think could be down the pipeline when Grayson Rodriguez gets back. We might not touch on it today because, again, I don't expect GrayRod back, at least in the next day or two. So, odds are, by the time we're having our next episode, he either is still rehabbing or is just getting brought up, and we haven't even seen the answers to the questions we have regarding that. So, let's dig back into Friday. You know sometimes I like to go off on a tangent. That can happen, guys. But it's the beauty in it, at least to me. I try and, even when I get rerouted, route myself back on course, and that's what we're going to be doing. So we know Cole Irvin had a very dominating day yet again, doing tremendous things for the Orioles, just as all their starters really have been. Now, Jordan Westburg, get used to hearing his name in this series because he had a fantastic series as a whole. Certainly started off with an RBI double to make it 1-0 on that Friday. Soon after, Mullins had an RBI ground out, making it 2-0. Both of them were in the second inning. Again, the middle to end of this Orioles lineup continues to just produce runs and opportunities, and we should expect it. Not only should we have expected it coming into the season, I know I did, and many people also did, but we should continue to expect it moving forward. If anything, we should only expect it to continue progressing in a positive direction. Because while Westburg remains hot, the other name, Mullins, well, listen, he had a very slow start, and he's gotten some hot streaks in there, but he's still batting just around 200, maybe even a few ticks under as far as batting average goes. So he's not living up to his potential and even his baseline of what he wants to be this season. We know Austin Hayes, and that's a name we'll talk about in a little later in the episode, but had his struggles early on. We do expect him to turn that around. We saw Colton Cowser have such great numbers for a stint too, but we've seen him cool as well, even though he hasn't gone frigid. I feel like he'll make sure he gets a hit every other day at least, even in a cold streak, which is important, which is a beautiful thing to see from a young player like Cowser. And we also have, let's say, the secondary young players, whether it had been Holiday or Heston, not really be able to contribute majorly. Now, whether it's one of those guys, both those guys, some other names, as far as the young guys go that contribute over that course, we only expect that to grow over time. Truly. The talent on these Orioles is so outrageous, top to bottom. I've been saying that. And spills well into the minors. So when you bring up a guy like Holiday or you bring up a guy like Heston and they're either struggling or just not doing necessarily what they did in the minors with the extra base hits and the home runs, it's okay because we're going to find that young piece who can do that. And it might be one of those two guys, if not both. Or it might be another name or two a little later in the season. But I have big belief that the Orioles are going to find that one or two rookies, quote-unquote rookies, because at least one, if not a couple of these names that could provide this spark aren't technically rookies, but still really in that prospect trying to break through to a consistent major leaguer in that point of their career. So we can call them quote-unquote rookies, while some might be, some might not be. Now, that was an insane tangent to get on. Talk about tangents. But let's bring it on back again. Apologies. I'm just excited, gang. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to be excited about for these Orioles. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm very passionately excited and genuinely excited about these Orioles. And I could continuously talk about these Orioles all day, every day. And that's why we're here, gang. That's why I'm here. And I think you're here because you're in a similar mindset or a similar boat as I am, and you just love hearing and talking and thinking about Baltimore Orioles baseball. So let's harness it right back in. Orioles with a 2-0 lead after the second, but Ketel Marte hits a home run. He actually had a pretty big series against these O's as well. He's certainly one of their most dangerous hitters, if not their most dangerous hitter, especially right now with the struggles of Corbin Carroll happening, even though Carroll had a decent series against us as well. Well, Marte brings it into a 2-1 game in the third with a home run. Orioles extend it, though, in the fifth inning with a Ryan O'Hearn single, making it 3-1. Diamondbacks get back that run in the sixth, making it 3-2 on a Gino Suarez RBI single, before Gunnar really extended the game past where the Diamondbacks could get to that day with an RBI double in the seventh. Gunnar continues to stay hot, continues to produce for this team at an MVP caliber level. And that was something they talked to him about after that game. And it was just one of these things where he's such a good guy and he's such a team player that you can tell he gets a little uncomfortable being asked about being in the MVP talk. And that's something certainly when he's 32 years old, we expect him to be comfortable about, because we expect that conversation to have happened a lot of years over, let's say, that 10-year span. But now as a 22-year-old, really in the first time ever being in this MVP talk, you know, it's something he's not used to. And you can see how maybe he's a little uncomfortable, at the very least, answering in those situations. But he continues to produce on the field time in, time out for these Orioles, putting up absolutely outstanding numbers. And you have to love it. And not just offensively, but defensively as well. Okay? Because multiple times in this series, whether it was in the wins or in the loss, we saw outstanding plays by Gunnar Henderson. Plays that sometimes didn't even look outstanding because of how easy he makes it look. And that's just another factor to why this kid is one of the MVPs of the Orioles. In fact, this weekend I was talking to potentially a new listener, potentially a new fan, and he asked me, he's not necessarily a big Orioles fan or even an Orioles fan at all, but I could tell he was enjoying my passion for it, and he's wanted to check out some episodes. I already had looked at a couple episodes after I told him. So he might be out here listening to him now. But he asked me basically who's their best player. And as much as I love Adley Rutschman, and he was the second name I brought up to him, Gunnar Henderson has to be the first name brought up when that question gets asked. Who's the best player on the Orioles? It's Gunnar Henderson, guys. I think that is established, cemented it. Now, Adley might bring different levels of it to it with the pitching staff and just catching as good as he is as a defensive catcher. That's so important. And also, there, like I've talked about, just this aura. In fact, I talked about it to the man I was introducing the show to. Just Adley Rutschman has this aura of winningness and getting it done. Well, Gunnar Henderson has displayed that aura as well around him. And it's moments like that that we've continued to see throughout this season that just continue to encapsulate that aura. So when we looked at the pitching staff, we talked about how great Cole Irvin was. I believe he pitched 5 2/3 in the game, give or take. Correct me if I'm wrong, but had a great day. After that, Kimbrel came in for the 7th inning. We're used to seeing Kimbrel in the 9th, and most recently blowing the games and not having success in the 9th. It's something we'll talk about more as far as what's going to happen. But it looked as though going into this series, the Orioles kind of wanted to at least alleviate that pressure, at least for the day, from Craig Kimbrel while getting him an opportunity to pitch well again. And he had a great seventh inning, a perfect seventh inning, I believe. Cano ended up coming in and saving the game. And while it was a 2-run lead, so technically the tying run was at home when the game eventually ended on that batter, there was a man on third, and the ball was kind of hit, not the hardest by any means, but still relatively hard, and hit Cano, bounced off Cano. He was good enough to run up, get the ball, deliver it to first base to end the game successfully. And I've been wanting to make this point for a little while now about how impressed I am at Yennier Cano to being able to field his position, right? So pitchers sometimes are great at fielding positions, sometimes aren't. But when it comes to Yennier Cano, it's so beyond important because of how many not hard hit balls he gives up, because of how many ground balls he induces, because how often do you see the ball hit 5-10 feet in front of the plate, rolling in kind of a dead man's area where maybe Adley can get to it, but maybe it's better to have Cano get it. Essentially, swinging bunts is what we're talking about. And Cano being able to go up, field the position successfully, and deliver the ball to first base. I wanted to really just make a minor point, at the very least, for a while about how impressed I am at Yennier Cano to be able to do that so consistently. Because it can get ugly, frankly, really quick if a pitcher is coming up on that ball and struggles maybe with his accuracy throwing that ball to first base, or isn't getting off the mound quick enough to get to that ball in time to deliver that ball before the runner gets there. So, and that's just if the runner beats the ball. Okay, what happens when you throw it into right or throw it into the crowd, like we've seen so often by pitchers? And heck, we've seen a few Orioles pitchers do it. So it happens. All I'm saying is Cano seems to consistently have those moments where he has to field his position in order to successfully get out of the inning or continue to do the job properly in that inning. And he does it seemingly every time. Knock on wood, but I can't remember a moment where Cano did not field that position properly. And it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing to see. So the Orioles take that game one with a 4-2 win against the Diamondbacks on Friday. We come back Saturday. Ended up in an 11-inning game. Very back and forth. And you felt like it was the Orioles game the whole time. But the Diamondbacks, are pesky and are kind of maybe not a sleeping giant, because maybe despite the fact that they got to the World Series last year, I don't think that they're like truly an elite level team, but I think they're truly a second tier team, maybe a top second tier team. And along those lines, they've underperformed this season. Really, along either lines, they've underperformed this season, as they were under 500 team coming into the series and left even farther under 500. So, but they have talent. And I know the broadcast talked about this a lot, and we're going to get to this when it comes to Sunday's game, but they're the type of team that can score a lot of runs really quickly on you and put up monster numbers. But they're probably not the type of team that's going to do that all the time. They're very inconsistent. So in this game, when they kept seeming to come back and forth, while you felt good about the Orioles in it, weren't necessarily overly confident in them finding a way, even though they found the way. So let's dig into it a little, right? And frankly, I shouldn't say that it felt like the Orioles game all day, because there was a moment truly where it did not feel like the Orioles day, and they brought it back to feeling like it. So it started off the Orioles way when in the second, yet again, Jordan Westburg gets himself an RBI double and puts the Orioles up 1-0. Well, unfortunately, right after in the third inning, Ketel Marte hits another home run, this time a 2-run home run, making it 2-1, and puts them up. And in that inning, it really started to feel like it was the Diamondbacks were going to find that like 4, 5, 6, 7-run inning against John Means, okay? Because John Means, and we'll talk about this a little later, but he was looking great to start the game. And then it seemed like something clicked for the Diamondbacks where they were on every single pitch, low especially. And I think the home run was a hanging ball, but they almost had a home run that was called foul. Then there was, I believe, another double before then the home run. And it was on like the same low pitch and just seemed like they had John Means' number. And it didn't seem like maybe the changeup or whatever he was throwing was working at that moment for sure. And you felt like, oh God, this could get ugly quick. So to escape that inning and John Means to escape that jam with it only being 2-1 is really what set up the Orioles to turn it back around and get back in the game. Ryan O'Hearn tied it up with an RBI single in the third right after that. So Orioles get right back. Diamondbacks wound up getting back up 3-2 on a Corbin Carroll sac fly in the fifth, followed by Yuri Gurriel RBI single in the fifth as well, 4-2. And so it's funny because like I was saying, it felt like it was the Orioles' day the whole day. By what I'm reading, you should be like, what is he talking about? Like, it should not have felt like the Orioles' day that day. But they kept escaping these jams. Again, they got out of that third inning, only having it be a 2-1 game. They were keeping in it, and that's the type of team that the Orioles are, that you can continue to be confident in them winning this game eventually, even if they continue to fall behind. And even when the lead gets extended 4-2, you still start feeling confident. Because in the bottom of the fifth, Gunnar Henderson hit his 12th home run of the season, making it a 4-3 game. And in the eighth inning, Santander hit a ball that was way out of the zone in the other batter's box almost. And the ball just kept carrying. I did not think it was going to get out. I was saying something like, no. And then it clicked that it was still going. And I was like, keep going. And then it just cruises over the center field wall to tie the game, let out a huge scream. Tony Taters, hero to tie it. And eventually, well, let's just talk about the 10th inning first, okay? So, 10th inning, Orioles wound up with bases loaded. I believe definitely only one out, possibly even no outs when they got the bases loaded. I can't remember exactly, but unfortunately, I believe it was Mateo, if I remember properly. Maybe not. Actually, probably not. I don't know if that adds up. Neither here or there. Grounded to an inning-ending double play. The Diamondbacks hadn't scored in the top of the 10th, hadn't taken advantage of that runner on second. So it was just one of these things where you were like, damn, man, like we were right there. All we need is a deep fly ball. And I mean, they're probably playing their outfielders in so they don't even get to the ball, let alone have a chance to throw the man out. And really just a ground ball with eyes to just find a hole or just find a spot where they can't make a strong throw at home would have won the game. So when the Orioles hit into that double play, ground out of the inning, just was kind of a devastating feeling. And yet it still didn't feel like they were going to lose that game. However, then you bring in Craig Kimbrel for the 11th, and you're like, oh, all my good feelings might have just disappeared. Kimbrel gets an out, but runner Carroll, who was the inherited runner on second, advances to third. So now you have a man on third, one out. He ends up hitting a batter. Then you're like, uh-oh. Now you're going, okay. But now you're also like, all right, inning-ending double play for them is now in order. Kimbrel ends up getting out of the inning, not with a double play. Ends up getting, I know a strikeout was one of them, and I forget whether it was a ground out or pop out or something along those lines. But Kimbrel, in that high leverage situation, comes through in the clutch to get out of that jam, not allowing Corbin Carroll to come home from third with only one out. And ultimately, that set up Jordan Westburg, first batter of the bottom of the 11th, going opposite field, kind of inside out shot by him that looped over like the first baseman, landed just inside the line, easily won the game. They ruled it a single. Probably would have been a double had it not ended the game and he was advancing. I'm almost positive he winds up on second base there. But neither here or there. Jordan Westburg, yet again, the hero, were one of the heroes in the game. Another walk-off for him this season. I believe his second. Definitely has multiple this season. And you love seeing it. We saw some good and some bad. Obviously, the best part we saw is that the Orioles just do not quit. Like I was talking about, they continue having this sense that they're going to win a game, even if they continuously fall behind. They just stay in it enough, and then pow, find a way to tie it, take the lead, win it. You love it. Also, John Means, listen, we saw some good, we saw some bad. His first start, he had 7 scoreless in Cincinnati, and it looked like Cy Young type John Means. On Saturday, we saw glances of that same thing, and then it, like I said, in the second inning, it started to feel like, like they're just right on him. And because we've seen John Means just get hit around also. Like, we've seen the greatest in John Means, the no-hitter, the 7 scoreless in Cincinnati, the being top 3 or whatever it was in Cy Young voting a few years ago. But we've also seen some games, just like you see from everyone, where, God, it just seems like these guys know exactly what's coming and exactly where it is, and it's batter after batter after batter, just teeing off on it, like that happened in the second inning. And again, we got lucky only letting in 2 runs there and only giving up that 1 home run. Ultimately, though, you still feel encouraged by John Means because of that first start in Cincinnati, followed by, at the very least, getting out of jams in that game, only allowing the 2 runs. Or whatever he allowed, 4 runs, or whatever he ended up allowing. I was going in Cole Irvin's giving up 2 runs. John Means, though, gave up all 4 runs, actually. I do know that. Because the bullpen was pretty much perfect. Now, they might have allowed a base runner here or there. We talked about Kimbrel hitting a batter in the 11th. But, ultimately, the bullpen pitched fantastic. Mike Baumann came in. Keegan Aiken came in. A lot of the names came in. They pitched a lot of guys in that game. So Sunday, really, the bullpen was dead. And so the Orioles take the first 2. Jordan Westburg had a 4-for-5 day with just 1 double technically on the books, but would have been 2 had that not ended the game. Okay. And he would have wound up on second, I fully believe. Ryan Mountcastle, also an awesome game. 3-for-5, 2 doubles, and a triple when the outfielder couldn't cut off the ball, and then it hit off kind of that wonky bullpen wall, bounced more towards left field. It was awesome. Cool to see. Mountie got on his horse and got to third. You love seeing it. Orioles take the first 2. Looking for the sweep. I thought they were going to get the sweep. And frankly, despite what the final score wound up being on Sunday, they absolutely had a chance to win that game, right? And we'll touch on the moments that really turned the game into what it was. And it was a 9-2 loss when it was all said and done. But it was nothing through 3. Dean Kremer was looking unbelievable. Literally striking out guys left and right. Unbelievable at that point. DBacks end up getting 1 in the 4th, 2 in the 5th, and then 6 in the 6th to really blow it open. Now, if we dig on how those runs occurred, though, right? I said even in a 9-2 loss, the Orioles could have very well won that game, okay? So let's dig into really how the runs were created and allowed. Well, in the 4th inning, that 1 run that they got was, you had a man on second, Corbin Carroll, I believe, and Dean Kremer tries to pick him off. And it's ruled a throwing error, but it's really just bad luck more than anything because he put the ball basically right on the bag. Like, he put it right on the runner, literally. Hits off Corbin Carroll, bounces into right center, even short right center. But by the time Mateo, I believe, was able to get to the ball, Carroll had taken advantage of his speed and gotten himself to third base. That winds up resulting in him getting driven in, whereas had he not been on third, he probably does not score that inning with what the batters that happened after that. So, throwing error on the pickoff, really bad luck, gets the man to third. Okay, you're not out of it at 1-0 by any means, but certainly that's showing the bad luck. Then, in the fifth, Kramer gets himself into some serious trouble with bases loaded. Still, though, a 1-0 game with 1 out, bases loaded. When there's a ground ball hit to third base, Ramon Urias is playing there that day. You know he won a Gold Glove in the past, so you trust, even though it wasn't the easiest play, kind of had to, reach a little bit farther than he would have to, or like reset himself. He still had time, had more time than he expected to have. And had he delivered the ball straight to James McCann at home, we get at least 1 out, if not an inning-ending double play. Because there's certainly the chance that McCann could have whipped it to first and gotten the runner still. No guarantee, but unfortunately, the throw is arid. It draws McCann off the home plate, and while I think technically, like in his mind, he knows his spike was like touching it, visually, there was no way to see that, and ultimately, they have to rule McCann was off, and the Orioles get no outs on that. It ends up going to a 2-0 game after that play. But, as we know, they put up another one in the fifth, making it a 3-0 game. And again, the game's not out of hand. We're kind of throwing it away a little bit, but not fully. Like, it's still there for the taking. Unfortunately, though, in the sixth inning is when it truly got out of hand for the Orioles. All of these runs in the sixth inning comes with 2 outs. You give up a 2-out home run, I believe a 2-run home run, 2 walks, 2 singles, and a double. Ultimately, 6-run score in that inning. And that's where the game gets away from you, gang. And it sucks because the Orioles were right there. Listen, 9-2, it's crazy to say you're right there. But again, even if you throw it away in the fourth there and that run scores, even if you throw it away in the fifth and both those runs score, you still could have gotten out of that 6, only having allowed 3 runs potentially for the rest of the game. And yeah, we only scored 2. But if it's a 3-2 game, who knows what happens mentality-wise. Once it gets to a 7-run game, not that you're not trying, but ultimately, a lot has to happen. So it's just natural to just kind of maybe not let that one go. You're still trying. I know these guys are still doing their best. But ultimately, there isn't that clutchness because there aren't really clutch moments at that point. It's just all headed towards the end. So Orioles certainly could have been in that game. Frankly, could have not even allowed a run that game. Could have technically gotten a shutout in a game that they gave up 9 runs in. Like, truly. So that's the audacity I have to say that the Orioles could have very well taken that game and swept that series. But I'm not going to be greedy about it because ultimately, Dean Kramer still pitched great. 5 2/3 innings, only 4 hits, 3 earned runs on the 6 runs that he was on the books to give up. Only 3 of them were earned. 10 Ks, tying a career high. 4 walks, 1 home run, which was, the one we talked about earlier. But ultimately, Dean Kramer pitched fantastic. Like, he looked great, and he's looked great for at least the past, again, just like Cole Irvin, 3 to 5 starts. Really, he's looked very good all season. I believe his ERA is, and I didn't write it down, I believe it's right sitting in like the 3.2s if I remember properly. But in the last, the Orioles showed this stat, and I didn't get it written down. It was something in the last, 4 or 5 starts. I want to say he has an ERA in the ones. And we know, just like Cole Irvin, 22 2/3 scoreless innings. So we've been getting phenomenal starts out of our guys, right? Even John Means on Saturday, while was getting hit around at times, still continued to get out of jams before they became a massive problem, keeping them in games and allowing them to win the game. And had Dean Kramer not had the bad luck of plunking Corbin Carroll and having the ball shoot out to the outfield, just enough for Carroll to get to third, and Ramon Urias maybe making a play that he makes 99 out of 100 times. I mean, a couple defensive mistakes, I think you could possibly get out of that game with no earned runs. At least no earned runs. Maybe no runs in general. Right? So Dean Kramer continues to show up, and it, again, is just one of the beautiful things that we're getting these elite starts out of not just the top of the rotation, the Cy Young candidates, but the guys that aren't household names outside of anywhere but Oriole baseball. You know, like Birdland's one of the only people really that know Dean Kramer well, name-wise. Maybe people remember him from the playoff game, but certainly that's not what you want to remember him for. Certainly that's not a good thing to remember him for, and isn't really a memorable thing that he did that day. So, put that in the past. Still, even in a 9-2 loss, we see glimpses of greatness from these Orioles in Dean Kramer. Hell, there were still a couple defensive plays. Gunnar Henderson had a play that I can't believe he got to this ball. It was like a pop-up in shallow left. We had Heston I believe Ryan O'Hearn playing left field that day. Maybe it was Heston. I can't remember. One of the two, but either way, they weren't. I think it was O'Hearn. He wasn't even close. We know they're not the fastest, either one, from the outfield. Gunnar Henderson finds his way from literally directly behind second base all the way out. I think they said 150 yards in a matter of seconds to catch this ball. And not just catch the ball, but not even diving or sliding, and instantly turning and getting it back to the infield. Gunnar Henderson is a special, special guy. Another positive that we saw was the Orioles' second run of the day was an Adley Rutschman home run from the left side of the plate, which is something that we're about to touch on more. But Adley really hasn't had that success very much this season from the left side of the plate. He's had it more from the right side of the plate. Now, that's just going to jump us right into our next topic. So we're just going to do away now with that DBacks series. They finalized the series, winning 2-1. Gotta love it. Take the series victory from a team that we are not that familiar with, do not play that hard, and frankly, on Sunday played their ace that's one of the best aces in baseball, in Zach Gallen. So it's a good thing, right? It's a very good thing. And I do want to say that the Orioles game tonight just recently started. So if I glance away and look at the TV for a little, that is because they showing a highlight, and I'm excited to see it. I want to see what's going on, all right? And Corbin Burnes gets out of the first in 1-2-3 fashion. You gotta love it. So maybe I'll keep you up to date on what's going on during it. Certainly we will talk about it in our next episode either way. So get back to Adley Rutschman, okay? There's been a lot to make about it. He hasn't really had the walks that he's had in the past, in his early part of his career, and he's having more strikeouts. However, he is hitting not just better, but more powerful, harder hit balls, more power. We're seeing all of the best things from Adley Rutschman. And it seems like whether it was him or the coaching staff or both, but they wanted to get more aggressive as far as Adley at the plate. We know that he always takes pitch one. Literally, more than any other batter in baseball, he watches the first pitch. And I'm fine with that. Personally, not to compare myself to Adley Rutschman, but that's always how I had the most success when I was playing baseball at whatever small level I was playing at the time. I always felt more comfortable seeing a pitch. I didn't care if the pitcher knew I was going to see that pitch and ended up grooving a strike, because to me, I at least got a judge on the speed, on the release, on everything. Even if it was somebody I was very comfortable with facing, I still wanted to start that at bat with a pitch. Just even if it was a strike. So I don't blame Adley for still taking the first pitch. In fact, I love it. It's one of the things I think that he stays patient even while getting more aggressive. And it just shows the complexities of his game. But and this is something we just mentioned, Adley's having a lot more success, especially power success, from the right side of the plate, okay, against lefties. Now, a part of that is, and we've talked this previously, they've been facing an outrageous number of lefties in the past few weeks. So he's been getting a lot more righty at-bats than maybe he had been in the past or will over the course of the season. It's a great thing, though, to see him hit that lefty home run, start kind of coming back together from that side of the plate. Not that it's been completely ugly, but it certainly hasn't been to the expert level of his right side, and really hasn't been at the level of his left side the past year and a half that he's been up. Now, we have always heard Adley talk about, though, his right side has always been his better side. So it shouldn't be surprising that he's a better righty hitter than maybe he is a lefty hitter when it's all said and done. And in more seasons than not, we're going to see him be better from the right side than the left side. Also, I believe that it's probably a really positive sign that Adley Rutschman is able to have some seasons where he's still very good overall, great metrics, great stuff, and hitting better from the left side like we've seen the past year and a half than from the right side, right? Because it allows him to be able to be successful either way. And at the same time, it's encouraging, not that we need any more to be encouraged about when it comes to Adley Rutschman, whose jersey I have on today, but it's very encouraging because it allows us to project the idea of, wow, can you imagine when he's hitting great from both sides of the plate at the same time? And I mean, he always is a dangerous guy from either side of the plate, no matter how hot or cold he is at any given stretch. But God, can you imagine the MVP type season he's going to have when both sides just happen to be clicking really well for the entire season? And it could be this season. Still very early, and he's had some success lefty. I think he's already had 2 home runs lefty, if I know correctly. Like I said, I know he had one yesterday lefty. So it's a beautiful thing to see Adley Rutschman continue to taking these steps to building out his full level of game. I love him. How could you not love him? Birdland loves him. It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to see Adley Rutschman continuing to expand his game from both sides of the plate. So the next thing I've written down is a couple roster moves that we just had, okay? So really all outfield based. We brought up Kyle Stowers, sent down Heston Kjerstad. Heston hadn't looked horrible and didn't look necessarily overmatched, but he certainly wasn't excelling and didn't hit a single extra base hit or home run in his most recent stint in the majors. We know he had success, at least some success, last year when he came up, but it wasn't the greatest thing either. Some good moments, but certainly not unbelievable either. And it's going to take these guys some time to really figure it out. Remember, Heston has doesn't have a lot of professional baseball experience still for a guy that's a little older on the prospects age-wise and was drafted maybe a few years later than some of these other prospects we've talked about. He dealt with that myocardosis and had to take all that time off. So he doesn't necessarily have the experience of these other guys, even if he might be a little older. So it's going to take him some time, and he did look good, and I really think the next time or two it comes, it's really just going to click. Once Heston Kjerstad really clicks, boy, is it going to be exciting, gang. Like, truly. And we talked about how he was somewhat of a dead roster spot because they just didn't have the at-bats for him right now. The way Ryan O'Hearn and Ryan Mountcastle are playing, and you need Tony Taters, and you have Cowser as another left-handed hitting outfielder, and you just didn't really have the at-bats for him. Tried to manufacture some, but even so, it was just best to move him back down before anything got very ugly or talked about crazy. Just give him some experience. Listen, again, we're trying to win a World Series this year. So I can't coddle every single person. You're an adult. You're a professional. You're going to have to figure out mentally how to handle going back down, retooling a little, and then you'll come back up. Like, we want you to be successful, for sure. But the team has to come first, okay? So Heston gets sent down. Kyle Stowers, who, just like Heston, has been absolutely tearing up AAA this season. They gave Heston the chance first. Wasn't looking great, so now let's give Kyle Stowers the chance. And if anything, I like it better, right? Because just like we talked about with the Ryan McKenna, Stowers isn't a rookie, okay? Stowers has been in the majors for decent stretches over the past few years. Kyle Stowers isn't necessarily new to this, even if he's still trying to break through into being consistently just on the major league roster, which he hasn't done yet. But Stowers has looked unstoppable and amazing. And frankly, Stowers has had better clutch moments, especially in pinch hit situations, in the past than Heston has. It's true. It's true. So if I'm going to have one of those lefty hitting outfielders up in the majors, I'm okay with them having done Heston first. Because again, Heston was the International Player of the Month last month. So, or in April, yeah. So it's just one of these things. I get Heston getting the call up, but it wasn't excelling at the major league level just yet. So let's bring the guy who probably also would have won Player of the Month if Heston wasn't in the minors that past month, Kyle Stowers, and bring him up. See how he's going to do. And hopefully he succeeds and excels. And frankly, there's a little bit of a jam-packed outfield right now. So I don't know, again, just like Heston, if Stowers is going to get much playing time and have the opportunity consistently. But I at least maybe trust Stowers mentally to be able to handle that gaps in playing time and come in with a clutch moment and a clutch hit. Also very exciting is Austin Hayes back in the lineup, back on the team, coming back from, I believe it was the calf injury, and he tore up his rehab assignment. We know he started off slow, but he's looked fantastic since rehabbing from this injury in the minors. And I could see him being one of the hottest Orioles over the course of the next couple weeks. I don't be surprised if Austin Hayes goes on a Colton Cowser type tear. Truly, gang. Truly. And this just goes to the point of where I don't know where the playing time for Stowers or Heston was going to come from once Hayes got back healthy, especially. Now, for the moment, they're keeping these 5 outfielders. Or 6 outfielders. 5. Mullins, Hayes, Santander, Cowser, Stowers. So 5 outfielders for the moment. And remember, Mateo can play outfield and has played outfield for them also. Also, O'Hearn can play outfield and has played outfield for them. So, it's one of these things where I don't know where all the playing time is going to come from, gang. We'll figure it out as we go. I wouldn't be shocked if even by the end of this Blue Jays series that's starting tonight, Stowers might be sent down. And we might be back to 4 outfielders. I'm not sure, though. We'll see how Kyle Stowers performs because I truly believe they're going to try and get him some at-bats early so they can figure out whether they want to go in a different direction, whether they want to maybe add a veteran somewhere. Or maybe if they want to stay with the 4 outfielders and add another infielder. Who knows? Ryan McKenna was the one that was sent down in place of Austin Hayes. Certainly McKenna could possibly come up. That's something. Listen, it's possible Jackson Holliday has broken through mentally and figured out what he needed to work on and shown the Orioles that he can do that at a major league consistency, and possibly he would be up. I think there's a lot to be said for the possibilities of these Baltimore Orioles moving forward. You know that there are multiple names down there that they could add, whether it be Jackson Holliday, whether it be Kobe Mayo. I'm forgetting the other one who I love so much, Connor Norby, whether it's Connor Norby. Like, if they want to add an infielder instead of a 5th outfielder, I think they can do that. I also think that the Orioles at the moment are also looking at it as, okay, we have Adley DH a good amount, so that means James McCann's going to have consistent playing time. We've figured out kind of a decent back and forth between Mountcastle and O'Hearn. That seems to be in a good balance, at least in the sense of them both performing pretty well consistently. And then you have Urias and Mateo that can float around the 2nd, 3rd short position. And I could see them kind of going, okay, making sense for that 5th outfielder and saying, let's just keep that going. And because we have so much talent with those outfields, and the infielders, we don't feel are ready. Maybe we don't think Jackson's ready again. We don't think Mayo's ready yet. Maybe they don't think Connor Norby's ready. I don't know. I want to think they probably think Connor Norby's ready, but what do I know? So that's kind of where my mind is at. I wouldn't be shocked to see Stowers get maybe just a couple days in the majors to prove that he can do it. Or even, heck, not even get an opportunity and then get sent down for one of these infielders. I could see a lot of things. Gang. So it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on that and kind of see how this roster manipulation breaks down. And that's really going to bring us right to our next topic, which is Grayson Rodriguez's rehab, right? So we know he got shut down a week or so ago. And we've kind of had the inkling that maybe it wasn't even for an injury. Maybe it was just to space out his starts and buy him some innings so he's not burnt out at the end. Maybe it was perfect timing. It was perfect timing, whether it was planned or not. It was perfect timing that when Bradish Amines gets back, oh, where's the spot going to come from? Oh, well, GrayRod's going to go on the IL. Okay, so again, and we talked about when he comes back, they might go to a 6-man rotation. And there's a lot of sense that's made in that. We'll see what happens as far as that's concerned. As far as GrayRod himself, he already has talked about, while it's not his decision, he doesn't feel the need. He doesn't see him needing to make rehab starts in the minors. Again, this goes back to the idea that maybe he's not really injured. Maybe there was never really an injury other than normal inflammation on his shoulder after pitching a bunch of pitches in a day. Maybe, I don't know. But he did throw 30-pitch bullpen. He had thrown a 15-pitch bullpen a little bit ago around our last episode. This one, he's thrown a 30-pitch bullpen on the 12th. Should be back soon. No real timetable yet, but I believe that the Orioles probably will bring him up or bring him back at some point this week. At worst, I think next week. Again, I don't even think there was a real injury. Maybe it was true precautionary. Maybe it was just down the road precautionary. You know what I mean? Just buying him some innings, not burning him out. We have this stretch coming up after this Toronto series. A stretch of 13 straight games happens. Then a stretch of 17 straight games happens. Then a stretch of 13 straight games happens again, right? So in that, we're going to need our starters. So I don't see any way he's not back by at least 2 series from now, St. Louis. But it makes perfect sense for him to come back either in Toronto, in this Toronto series, or next series at home. Oh, excuse me. These allergies kill me. In the next series against Seattle to start those 13 straight games in that first stretch. Also, why I think it would make the most sense is because that's the stretch of season that really makes the most sense for a 6-man rotation. Because that's the idea that, you know, you're not really getting your normal off days, right? So a guy like Corbin Burnes, we know, wants to pitch every, I believe, 6 days, okay? But if you have all these games in a row, well, he might have needed that extra rest day. Like, it might add up to where you can keep this rotation perfect, even with Corbin Burnes being on schedule. And even if Corbin Burnes gets to skip the 6-man rotation, stay on schedule for him and everyone else rotates, I still think that that provides a big benefit. You have a lot of guys that don't have a lot of innings in their life, or a couple guys that are kind of mitigating injuries or coming back from them, as far as Bradish, as far as Means. You know, again, a Kramer, I know he wanted to throw 200 innings this year, but ultimately he's never really come that close to even 200 innings. So from the Orioles standpoint, they could go, I don't care about how many innings you throw as far as 178 or 200. If you could have thrown 200, but we just didn't give you those extra 3 starts to get there, what do I care if it's better for your pitching in each of those starts? If your performance is better in the starts that you have, I'd rather that than you get just more starts just to say you did it, just to hit an innings number that you want to hit. I'd rather you stay healthy and be real. And Cole Irvin, he might have thrown a lot of innings at times in seasons in his life, but again, you don't want to burn these guys out. So, you know, I'm not going to dig any more into the 6-man rotation that I think is coming when GrayRod comes back for that stretch of 13 straight, followed by 17 straight, followed by 13 straight. And I think that that's the best move that you could possibly do. And again, Corbin Burnes will stay on schedule, I believe, even if that's the case. But I think a guy like Grayson and a guy like Kramer, you're going to buy some innings by just having them in that 6-man rotation sort of thing. And a guy like Bradish and a guy like Means, you have a better chance of keeping healthy by doing that as well. That's just my personal take on it. There's a chance maybe just like Corbin Burnes, Kyle Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez and John Means and Dean Kramer are going, and Cole Irvin are going, no, either put one of us in the bullpen and keep this a 5-man rotation because we all want to stay on schedule as much as we can. And in those 13 straight, 17 straight, 13 straight, if out of nowhere you want to give somebody a spot start to buy some guys a day or two, okay. But overall, we're going to stick with this 5-guy rotation. We'll see. I don't think they have the pull like that, but I think Corbin Burnes can kind of pull that. I don't know if anybody else right now can, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe Kyle Bradish could. That's interesting. So, now a couple numbers for the Orioles, okay? A kind of just showing you how talented they've been this season, okay? They're 3rd in the American League in runs scored. I believe still leading the majors in home runs. Meanwhile, they have the 5th best team ERA in all of baseball. That is a beautiful thing, doing it on both sides of the ball. We know the defense comes to play almost every single day. Take out that Sunday loss. The defense has been looking tremendous and makes plays nonstop. In fact, even in Sunday's loss, we saw guys make plays nonstop. So it's a beautiful thing. The Orioles right now are on pace, like we said, 26-13. They're on pace right now for 108 wins, gang. 108 wins. I mean, coming into the year, I was the one telling you that they were absolutely a lock to win 90 games and make the playoffs. They were most definitely going to be right at the top of this division, if not eventually run away with the division. That they'd most likely be pushing for, if not get to, 100 wins again. And they'd be pushing for the best record in baseball. And just a couple episodes ago, I think, I was going through it and talking about how this is the type of situation where we're going to win not just 100, possibly, not just 105, not just 107, possibly 110. I said that. I said maybe even more. And then I was like, yeah, maybe that's a little far-fetched. Well, they're at 108 already. Now, do I think 108 might be a little strong? Yeah. But what? Maybe by a few games? So we're talking 103, 104, 105? Gang, this is the Orioles that we're talking about right now. The Baltimore Orioles. Our Orioles. After about a quarter of the season, are on pace for 108 wins. Second best record right now in all of baseball. Best record in the American League. Fantastic, gang. I saw those numbers and wanted to catch you up. Now, we're going to dig more in probably our next episode when the Orioles are officially 40 games into the season. And that's going to kind of be a quarter recap, and we're going to really dig into the Orioles statistics as a whole, as a team, as individuals, and kind of projecting, just like we just were doing for wins, on a lot more stuff. And just really show how exciting these Orioles are and how they've laid the foundation for an unbelievable season moving forward. All right. Now, what's the plan with Craig Kimbrel? I think that the Orioles going into that DBacks series, listen, everyone's still talking very positive and stuff, but I think at least on Friday it was clear they needed him to have an appearance that was successful. That was not the ninth inning. That was not a save situation. And he did it. He did it very successfully. A perfect inning. And then I think you saw a little more trust that next day, Saturday, as they waited till extra innings to bring him in a tie ball game, understanding if he did let up a run or two, we could come back in the bottom. It wasn't the end of the game. Now, luckily for us, he didn't give up any runs, got out of the jam that, he found himself in, which wasn't an insane one, but still not the easiest. First and third with one out. No runs, came home, picked up the win after Westy's walk-off, and it was good. And everything we're hearing from it is positive stuff and talking about, the thought of, listen, we know he can do it. We trust he can do it. We know how great he can be. We know how great he is. He's still our closer. He's still in that role. And I think all of that's true. I also feel as though there's an end coming at some point. It's an end game. You know what I mean? It's one of these things where I don't think come playoff time, Craig Kimbrel is just the go-to closer every single night at the very least. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's not even the closer at all at that point. Now, we'll see. Maybe these are just some early struggles in the season, still getting worked up. It's not even that warm out yet. Just figuring it all out, getting used to Baltimore, getting used to the AL East, and it'll all come together for him. I feel, like I said a few episodes ago, it's going to get better before it gets worse. And maybe this is the getting better phase. Awesome. Maybe it's better. Hopefully it stays better through that 13 straight, 17 straight, and 13 straight. And then if it starts going off the rails, okay, maybe it's right around All-Star break. After that 13, 17, 13, you have 4 series before the All-Star break. Maybe it's right around there. It starts getting wonky again. You see how it is after the All-Star break. Boom. You're headed toward the end of August, or you're headed toward the end of July. Figure it out. Trade deadline. You make a move. You just put it to rest. And maybe Kimbrel stays in the bullpen as a setup man, as a mid man, something. But maybe he just loses the closer job. I think that that's probably what's going to come. Or the Orioles go in-house option with it. Now, I talked about how I have a name on my wish list, right? Far away from Christmas. But if I had my Christmas in July wish list, right, I'd be asking for Mason Miller of the Oakland Athletics. Now, it's been talked about a lot in the last week or so. It's actually funny because I talked about it on a few episodes ago, and it seems like I know that the national media is not hearing me right now. I know I'm not the voice that's causing this, but it seemed like ever since I brought it into the universe, it's all that's been talked about on all these shows is Mason Miller potentially being traded at some point by these A's. You know, he's 25 years old, stud closer, throws 104, rookie, 6 years of control. You think, why would a team ship him? Well, let's just dig into the reasoning behind it first, okay? And why it makes sense from their perspective to trade this player. One, they always trade every talent they have. So it's right in line with what they do, their history, right? Then you also add in the factor that they're still a few years away. I know they're going to Sacramento next year. They're talking about being able to put a competitive field team on the field in the next 2 to 4 years, okay? Well, again, Mason's already 25. And you don't build your team around a closer. So I don't think that they're looking at their top to bottom roster, all of their minor leaguers and all of their prospects and all their talent and going, this is absolutely a core that will be competitive in 2 years. Like, let's say, the Orioles did 2 years ago. I think 2 years ago, the Orioles looked at this core prospects and still the veterans on the team and went, this is going to be something that maybe they didn't think would be this amazing, but that's going to be very competitive in the next 2 years. I believe so. I don't think the A's are in that spot, right? I don't think they have that luxury. I think they're looking at it and going, we need to find some players, gang. We need to do something to kind of jumpstart this. And we know that they're going to be picking high in the draft again, but that's no guarantee. And baseball drafts, sometimes the players take 3, 4, 6 years to be competitive at the major league level. Hell, if they ever are. So you can't rely necessarily on the draft, even though it's something that you want so badly to work out and these ball clubs put so much faith in, right? The Orioles have hit on, it seems like, every one of these top picks in recent years. But that never happens. Not just never happens. I don't know if that's really ever happened at the consistency the Orioles have in the past few years, right? So you can't rely on that if you're the Oakland Athletics. And you're not going to be buying players. So what do? You take this very talented reliever at maybe the peak of his value ever, potentially ever. We know arms can go like that. And if a kid's throwing 104 consistently, I mean, if you're saying you want to be competitive in 3 to 4 years, there's a chance he might have had 2 to 3 Tommy John surgeries by that point if you hold on to him. You never know. Maybe he has 0, and I hope for his sake, whether he's an Oriole or an A or whatever, that he hasn't had that problem, and that doesn't happen. But if you're the A's, can you just hope that happens? And even so, what do you have then? An all-star closer? Even though you don't have a team to get to the closer? Right? So, an all-star closer only does so much for you if you don't have the team around him to get to that save situation. So, trading him for a package of, let's say, 4 to 6 nice prospects makes all the sense in the world. It doesn't even make sense to me for them to just try and gung-ho get this top prospect. Let's say, while this wouldn't happen and we would never do this, let's say they go, we want to straight up swap Mason Miller for Jackson Holiday. Orioles would go, no. But I think the A's would be stupid to do that as well. Not because Jackson, I don't think, will be a phenomenal player, but because they need to spread out talent. They need as much talent as they can get. So they need whatever team it would be to trade for them to give them, again, 3, 4, 6 prospects that are nice prospects. Now, what team is going to package that many really attractive prospects for a closer, even a young closer with 6 years of control and 104-mile-an-hour fastball? Not probably too many, because that would then wipe out most team systems, including maybe some of their top prospects, who maybe aren't top prospects in the game, but that organization's top prospects. I know the Orioles have so much talent and so many prospects that they could take from their second and third tiers, package 4, 5, 6 second or third tier prospects, keep, let's say, 5 elite prospects on top, and still have some solid second and third tier prospects, with the trust that we can draft well enough to find at the very least second and third tier prospects. Because again, we don't need everyone to be Gunnar Henderson to be a nice prospect. So you can pick the names, right? They could pretty much pick whatever names they wanted at some point. As long as they're just a handful, 2 or 3 from the second tier, 2 or 3 from the third tier. Awesome. Like, I'm okay. And then keeping those top prospects, keeping Mayo, keeping Basallo, keeping Jackson, keeping Povich, keeping McDermott. Like, those guys we're not touching in this. But we can sure trade, I always forget his name, Jed, the Florida prospect. I'll remember in a second. I did this last episode and maybe 2 episodes again too. I want to call him Jed Boyer, but that is not the guy's name. Judd Fabian, right? Take Judd Fabian or Max Wagner, the third baseman, or one of these guys, right? You pick your guy because they're all attractive prospects. And the thing is, the Orioles already have such a surplus of talent at every single position and level, whether it be veterans, whether it be veterans who are just coming into their age prime, whether it be young kids that are just kind of getting the best of it, of these major leaguers, when Rushman and Henderson kind of just coming into their own, or whether it be like young rookies, whatever it may be. These Orioles have so much talent that are spilling throughout the minor leagues that eventually they have to move some of them. So you identify them, and frankly, if you made this moves, hell, like a Kyle Stowers is a perfect name for this trade. And I love Kyle Stowers. I think Kyle Stowers is a very nice player. But again, at a certain point, you just have to pick and choose. And if you're keeping all those guys I mentioned and Heston, okay, so make it 6 guys, Heston included, and you're not touching Heston, Mayo, Holiday, Basallo, name your guys, right? Whatever, Povich, McDermott, like, pick the top guys. Then we can give the A's 4 to 6 players, 2 or 3 of which will be in the majors day 1 for them. 2 of them will be in the majors next year for them. And 2 of them will be in the majors hopefully in 2 years for them when they want to be competitive. And these other guys are now reaching really their potential and breaking through in their prime. And the other guys are just coming into it. Then that's attractive for Oakland, or soon to be Sacramento, soon to be Las Vegas, for the A's. This is very attractive for the A's, I believe. And that's why Mason Miller is the man I want. Because now let's talk about from the Orioles' perspective and why it makes sense for them. Obviously, it would fix the closer problem. This is one of the most promising and best closers in baseball currently. Excuse me, I want to sneeze. Trying not to sneeze. He throws 104 miles an hour. The Orioles have had unbelievable success with guys throwing really hard in recent years. And just pitchers in general. Excuse me. And bringing out the best in pitchers in general, right? So imagine what they could do with this prospect. This kid, Mason Miller, throwing 104 miles an hour consistently. He would instantly step into the closer role. I'm sorry, Kimbrel. Go into the new shiny toy. I don't know if we would then trade Kimbrel, drop Kimbrel, or potentially just move Kimbrel to a setup to middleman. And I'd be okay with that if he's okay with that. I think he would be. I think he would get it. Truthfully, I think he'd understand and realize that maybe he's not a major league closer anymore, but he certainly can be a major league bullpen arm for the next couple years and stay in the show a little longer, at least this year, and try and get himself a ring this year, just like all these guys are doing. And then, now, I think a lot of Birdland would hear this and go, well, we're getting Batista back next year, dude. Why would we trade all these prospects for a closer when we have a closer coming back? The best closer in baseball. Right. And I'm not trying to take Batista's job. So while I'm happy for Mason to take Kimbrel's job, I think Mason Miller would instantly just become the best setup man in baseball and allow the Orioles not to burn out Felix Bautista when he comes back next year with all these back-to-back-to-back games and not have to have him do multi-inning games, multi-inning saves. Instead, Mason Miller could be the one that's either setting up in those prime situations before the save or giving Batista the day off and allowing Miller to save those games. I think it makes all the sense in the world. Also, while I'm hoping and praying Felix Bautista comes back being the guy we've come to know as the best closer in baseball, there's no guarantee of anything, gang. There's no guarantee how any one person can react off of what that he's going through, right? And how he's going to come back. So it gives us some insurance. If, God forbid, Felix comes back not being Felix. If Bautista comes back not being the unstoppable force, not being the best lockdown closer in baseball, heck, we don't need to panic. Miller can just take over the closer role, and then Bautista can move to a setup spot. And that's not what I want, and that's not what I expect to happen. I expect Bautista to come back and better than ever, probably. But again, it's allowing us to win now this year while setting ourselves up for the future no matter what the outcome is. If Bautista comes back not being himself, we still have an all-star closer. And guess what? If Bautista is himself, this kid's still young and under control for 5 more years after this year. So it's the type of move that sets you up for the future, the current, the short term, and the long term. Like, I love this move. I absolutely am obsessed with this move. Since I've moved on from the idea of Mike Trout being an Oriole, I've now gotten on to Mason Miller being an Oriole. Is huge. Would be huge. And I think will be huge if they can make the move. So I want all of Birdland to start talking about this. Get the rumblings in the street, gang. I want to start hearing people from the rooftops on your milk cartons screaming for these Orioles to go out to trade for Mason Miller. That's the move I want, gang. And now we're going to wrap up the episode with Mr. Rubensplash's neighborhood. You absolutely love seeing David Rubenstein get himself in the crowd. You saw him the other day just throwing hats out to people. I loved it. Then he went into the splash zone, played Mr. Splash. He had Rubensplash on the back. Might have to pick me up one of them jerseys. It was so cool. Absolutely love it. I love how he's just a man of the people with these fans, man. The fans of Baltimore deserve this. These Orioles fans have waited so long for this core. Literally, I tell people I waited my whole life for this roster that we have in front of us. And on the same parallel, we have an owner I've waited my whole life for the Orioles to have. Just this fun, energetic, cares about the team, cares about the city, cares about the people, wants to give away stuff, beers, hats, spray people with the hose, put on a goofy jersey, wearing a hat that looks like it was from when the stadium opened in the mid-90s. Hat that looks like it's as old as I am. I love it because I wear a jacket on the daily that you've seen me in here, my Orioles starter windbreaker. That's as old as I am, pretty much. And I freaking love it, man. It shows his passion. It shows his love for this team and this city. And just the idea that he wants to do every single thing that he can to make this team a winner. And keep this team a winner. And I love to see it, gang. It was a magical moment how everything happened and the deal was able to get passed right in between spring training and the regular season. It was like it was written in the stars, gang. And that's how this season feels for us. Written in the stars. American League champs, I believe. Hopefully World Series champs. It's feeling like maybe a repeat of 1983 is coming, gang, and I freaking love it. I would love nothing more. Like I told you, I live right outside of Philly, so I'd love nothing more than Orioles-Phillies World Series, repeat of 83, and we take it again from them. Please. Either way, I just wanted to talk about how Rubensplash really made me laugh, and I know he's talking about getting a bobblehead now, and the people love him, as they should, and he loves the people. And God, is it refreshing, man. God, is it exciting, and it's energizing, and it just makes me so dang happy. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love what I've been seeing from these O's. I love what we've got going on. 26-13, best record in the AL, second best record in baseball, headed into the day, taking 2 of 3 from the Diamondbacks, starting a series against the Blue Jays tonight, and we tend to dominate the Blue Jays. Just be on watch. We face Yusei Kikuchi on Wednesday, excuse me. We face Kikuchi in the third game of the set, and we dominate Kikuchi, especially Mountcastle. I'll just tell you now, so you know I'm a gambler. Tell you now, if you're not betting Ryan Mountcastle to hit a home run in that third game of the series when Kikuchi's pitching, you're missing out, gang. You're missing out. All right. Well, hope tonight goes our way. I believe it's still nothing at the moment. So we are going to get out of here so we can watch the game. This will be posted late tonight, early tomorrow morning after game 1, I'm sure. But doesn't mean that it's still not a fantastic episode. Love the one we talked about today. Had some really good stuff on our hands, breaking down some Orioles baseball. So this has been another episode of the Talkin Orioles Baseball Podcast. Let's go!